Who can say for certain? Maybe you're still here. I feel you all around me, your memory so clear. Deep in the stillness, I can hear you speak. You're still an inspiration. Can it be that you are mine forever, love? And you are watching over me from up above. Fly me up to where you are, beyond the distant star. I wish upon tonight to see you smile, if only for a while to know you're there. A breath away is not far to where you are.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen out there in Facebook, YouTube, and wherever else I may post this video. This is David G, and welcome to episode 2 of a series that I'm entitling I Remember Mama, is basically meant to be inspirational videos sharing my memories of my dear beloved mother who passed away to the presence of our Lord Jesus Christ on July 28th, 2015. And there are so many great stories over the years I have and memories of her that I'm sure, especially to all the believers out there, would be very inspirational, because my mother was a mother. She was a person of strong faith, and all through my life I've seen nothing but miracle after miracle of deliverance and safety and healing happen in her life. And that is why that my faith is as strong as it is today. And that's why whenever my faith wavers, I think back on all the things that I saw her go through and all of the times that God brought her out, and so many circumstances that I don't care where you are with faith, you would have to say, man, that does seem like somebody up there really liked her. And tonight's episode is no exception. And as you can see the banner here behind me, the title of this is Taxi from Hell. And that's pretty much what it turned out to be. So, beginning the story, we have to go back a few decades in time. Let's see, I was probably, I don't really know how old I was at the time, but I think I was probably somewhere around 15 or 16 years old. And of course at that time I was still living at home with my brother, my parents, and I remember that day, basically everyone was wondering where Mother was at, because it was starting to get dark, and she had went out as she normally did. She had went out to the bank to get money and to go pay her bills. And this is back in the days before the internet and cell phones. For the average person then, you would have to take your money. You would either send your bills to your electric company, your gas company, or whatever by mail, or you would go to the companies yourself and pay them. And my mother, even though she was someone who never really believed in credit cards, she always paid with cash, and she unfortunately liked to carry a lot of cash in her purse. She was the type of person that at any given time, if you were to look in her purse, you would probably find at least a good $500 in her purse. It'd be a rare instance if you went into her purse and you didn't find at least $100 or $200 bills. And she liked big bills. She liked $100 bills, $50 bills. When she would go, to the bank, and she'd say, "Give me 50s and 100s," and that's just how she was. And as I said, this was back in the days when she would go down and, she would first go to the bank, and then she would go downtown and pay her bills. Our family bank back at the time in Cincinnati, Ohio was Provident Bank. They were bought out by PNC now recently, but back then they were Independent Bank, and that was our family bank. And I remember ever since I was a little kid, I remember normally on the weekends I would go with my mother and father, and they said, well, we're going to go pay bills, we're going to go to the bank, and then after that we'd end up going out to eat. It was a big family thing. But this was the time, and I believe it was an actual weekday, where she went alone. And I think she only had one bill to pay. I think she was going to pay our gas and electric bill. And it was starting, she had went out earlier that afternoon, and it was starting to get late. It was like about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. I can't remember now if it was summer or winter, but that's not really an important detail. But we were all worried about her, and again, this was before text messages, so it's not like, I could call her phone and go, hey mom, where you up? Or send her a text and go, hey mom, where you at? When that technology came forward, she was really into it, and I taught her all about texting and calling and everything, but this was before that technology. So we were all worried about her. And to jump to the end of the story, I remember finally getting a call. I think it was 6:30, 7 p.m. And I said, Mama, where you at? And she's like, don't worry. I said, well, you've been gone a long time. We expect you to be back long before now. And she's like, well, I had to kick some niggas behind. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, I will tell you the whole story when I get home. I'm on my way home. My friend is taking me home. And the thing about it is, when I tell you the story, she sounded so calm when I was talking to her on the phone. You would never have guessed what she went through by her voice inflections. I wish to God I could have played a recording of it. She sounded as though she'd got stuck in traffic or something. But let me tell you what happened. Here is the story. She leaves Provident Bank and she flags down a taxi. And she said that she thought it was strange that there were two people, in the taxi, a man and a woman. But she said, whatever, I just want to get my taxi, and go home. And she didn't think about it. And they start driving her out on the expressway. And she's like, well, where are you taking me? I live, only like a couple miles from the bank, because we lived in Walnut Hills / Evanston. And the bank was on People's Corner. Anybody in Cincinnati know where that is. But they ended up taking her out on this road. And she's like, what's wrong with you guys? This is not, the way that I live. And then the woman gets nasty and says, shut up. You basically are you're going to comply with what we tell you to do. And the woman reaches back and takes her purse. And then, of course, as I told you before, my mom I think she had the money to pay the gas bill. And I think she paid and she had some left. But she said at that time she had about $800 or $1,000 in her purse. So the woman said, man, you know what? We really hit the jackpot with this lady. Look at all this money we have. And my mother's like, you better give me my purse back unless you want some trouble. And she said, you need to shut up. You're going to do what we tell you to do. And some of the details are murky, but I don't believe they had a gun. I believe my mother said that she pulled a knife on her at that point. And my mother's like, oh, so that's the way it is. So you guys are gonna take my money, and what are you gonna do with me? And the woman says something like, we're gonna dump your body out on the expressway or something like that. And this was far back into the 1980s. And those of you who've lived in Cincinnati, going back to the 80s and the 70s and all that, you'll realize that back at that point, they were still putting up a part of what is known as 71 North, the interstate now, that goes all the way from Cincinnati, all the way to Cleveland, all the way to Columbus and Cleveland, and keeps going up toward Canada. Well, at that point, Cincinnati was just being added to it. So there was plenty of construction around where we lived in that whole area, because all of Interstate 71 was not completely done yet. So they get on 71 and they're starting driving toward the parts that are not done, where it's basically nothing but mud and no pavement or nothing. And my mom's like, oh, I see what's going on. They're going to take me out here and try to kill me out here on this road where no one is. So, my mother stayed calm as she always did whenever there was so many dangerous situations that I, even as a young kid, was with her, and I was really scared and afraid, but she always remained calm. And she remained calm, and she said that suddenly God spoke to her, and here she is sitting in the back of the taxi. God speaks to her, and God says, look down on the ground to your left, on the floor. And guess what? There was, I don't know what you call this, a six-pack or what you call it, but there were bottles of beer down on the floor. A full, like, six-pack or however they sell those that had not been opened. And these were glass bottles of beer. And my mom said, oh, okay, thank you, Lord. I got something to fight with. So what my mom does is, my mom picks up 2 of those bottles, and she clubs the driver over the head with one, and then I think and then it breaks over his head. And, he's losing control of the car. And then my mom, she took the part of she said the neck of the bottle broke off over the guy's head, so it had the sharp glass part still left. And she took the glass part and she stabbed the woman in her neck. As gross as it sounds, she said she stabbed her in the neck, and she said blood was just going everywhere, and the woman went unconscious, and here she is in the car. The car is, losing control, and she said she jumps up while the he's nearly about going unconscious himself because he's been clubbed across the head with a beer bottle, and she jumps over him and she grabs, the wheel of the car to try to get the car under control. And I remember she said it was so strange how the car, because they were doing probably a good, 40 something, 50 miles an hour. But she said when she grabbed the control of the wheel, she said it was very easy, to slow the car down. And the car was like off the road. It was like basically just muddy area where they hadn't added that part of the road, the concrete, even added road. So we're off the concrete in this really muddy area. And she says basically the car just ends up slowing down and everything. And she said the driver, she said he was still semi-conscious, so she took another bottle, clubbed him across the head to make sure that he was completely out. And she said the woman was, slunched over on, the passenger seat in the front, and she said she was bleeding profusely. And I said, well, did you think you killed her? She said, at that point, I did not care because they were going to take me out and kill me. I had to defend myself. So my mom takes her purse back, and then she's like, okay, well, where am I? How am I going to get home? She gets out of the car. She knows that she's on a part of 71, but again, as I told you, they had dug up so miles and miles of that area because they were in the process, the city was in the process of, putting the concrete down to start to extend Interstate 71. And then over where I lived, I went to St. Mark's School, which was on Dana Avenue. We had to walk in that area, and this was over that area now is like a bridge that goes over 71, but at that point the bridge was not made, so there was like miles and miles of just muddy area that the road commission people were going to put the concrete on to continue to make Interstate 71. But my mom, she said, I just was so confused because none of it looked familiar to me, and she says I didn't know where I was. And again, this is the 1980s, so she doesn't have a cell phone. There's no cell phones. She was out in an area that's unpopulated, so there was no store. There was no, payphone or anything she could do, to call for help. And she says, well, you know what? What I always do whenever I get in trouble, she said she started to pray. She said, Lord, just help me, find my way home and out of this. And then she looks up and she sees a car that that is familiar to her. And this car is also driving through the muddy area where no cars are really allowed to be, and there's no reason why you'd want to be there. And when she gets to the car gets closer and closer, she's like, oh my God, I recognize the car. And I don't remember the man's name now, but when she got close to the car she saw a friend of hers. Now again, this is way back in the 1980s. So just to give, the younger people, a primer of what life was like back then, guess what? Even before Uber, there were people who used their vehicles, to take their friends or to pick up even strangers to give them rides to undercut the cabs. And, back in the day, we called them bootleg cab drivers. Yes, that's what we called them. That they were the precursor to what we have known now today as Uber. And they would go. Sometimes my father would do it when we got a car. He would go to the supermarket. If you see somebody, and you say, "Hey man, would you like a ride back home?" I'm not going to charge you as much as the taxi would, and that's how a lot of people made money. And sometimes my mom had a few friends who did that, and because they knew her well, they would take her places for a lot, or farther out for a lot less than a taxi with a meter running, whatever, take her. And my mom, and my mom ran into her friend, and she said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Miss Gunn, I got a story to tell you. I have no idea why I'm here. I was driving on the part of 71 that is, in service, and I kept feeling this voice down inside of me telling me, get off the road, turn here, go to this exit." And then he said, the more and more that I would try to fight the voice in my stomach, it kept getting louder and louder. And he said it felt physically as though he said, the only way I can explain to you, it felt as though I was a pregnant woman with a baby kicking in my gut. Every time that I tried to disobey the voice, it got stronger, kind of like in my gut. And I could feel it kicking, saying, "No, turn here, go here, do what I tell you to do." So he said, and this man, I believe at the time, he was not a Christian, but he said, from what I hear, is that this has got to be God or somebody talking to me, because I never helped others before and I can't ignore it. And he said, even as I started to drive off the road, I was like, "Oh my God, why is this voice telling me to go down here? This road is not finished. It's nothing but mud. My wheels could get stuck in a ditch. I could run over a cliff or something. I don't even know where I'm at." But he said every time that he tried to ignore the voice, it kept getting louder in his gut and kicking at him. And he said it was like a woman with a baby kicking. So he said the voice basically was his heavenly GPS and guided him to where my mother was. And this man himself was not a Christian himself. And it was the voice of God that led him to where my mother was, to find her, to take her to safety. And that is what happened. And we come to find out, it was on the news later, the driver and his accomplice, that woman, they were wanted in like 3 or 4 states. And what they would do is they were from New York City, from what I remember. They would drive to places like Cincinnati, and they would go and they would basically rob a cab driver. They would, beat him up, throw him out his cab, leave him somewhere, and basically take his cab and pretend to be cab drivers for like a day. And then everybody they'd pick up, they would rob and sometimes hurt. And from what I remember, they found the original cab driver who owned the cab, and they had beat him up, and he had been unconscious, beaten pretty badly, but he did survive. They were both caught, and to this very day, I believe that the female accomplice, she did survive, but of course my mother would not, and my mother basically gave a statement to the police, and they said, we're not going to charge you for anything. You did what you needed to do to survive, because these people have hurt people from state to state. And I think they even killed one person in their rampage, and they had been coming from New York. So I think Ohio was like their 3rd or 4th state that they had been through doing this. They would do it they would take the cab for like a day and then ditch the cab after they had picked up, a few people with money. And of course, when they hit my mom, they hit a jackpot, because she loved carrying large bills and money. And she ended up giving, a statement to the police, and they were caught. And the cab driver, the cab driver, he was rescued and taken to the hospital, and he survived too, but he was beaten just unmercifully. I mean, he was, his eyes were closed from what I understand. He had a serious concussion. They thought that he wouldn't even come out of it, but thank God he came out of it, and without any serious brain damage. But again, this was another one of those situations where my mom got into trouble, and God was there for her. She was minding her own business, carrying that kind of money. We always warned her about that, but these were the days. She could have had a credit card, but she just didn't want credit cards, and she didn't really want, she had a debit card, I believe, but she would, pay her bills with cash. But when she got in danger, God was there for her, and he brought her out in a miraculous way. And like I said, there are so many memories that I have in this area that I'm going to be sharing with you guys on Facebook and YouTube and all over on social media, especially those of you who are believers, to help build your faith that when you get in danger, God will help you. And I was thinking about some times that I messed up in some critical dangers like this too. My mom, most of her stories beat mine, but there are some times where I've been in some danger where God has also, brought me out too. So I hope you've enjoyed this story, and I hope it's been a blessing to you, and I hope it builds your faith if you're going through anything now, or if you're, if you are possibly in danger, to call on God, because God does not forget anyone who knows him, no matter where you are. I don't care if you're backslidden, living in sin, or whatever. I don't care. I don't care if you're, having an adultery and a person comes in to kill you. I say cry out to God, because God has that mercy on you. And if you've ever known God, God will not forgive you. And even if you don't know him, God wants to preserve your soul. He wants to preserve your life until you have a chance to give it to him, so you can forgive your sins, so you can be with him when you die. I believe God will protect you even if you don't know him, if you have the faith to cry out to God. You don't have to be religious. You don't have to be perfect. Just have the faith, belief in God, and cry out to him, and he will be there for you. Thank you so much for watching this video. There's going to be plenty more to come as I celebrate the memory of my beloved, dear mother. Thank you all for watching. God bless you all, and have a great day and great evening whenever you're watching this video. Thank you so much.